I'm Beth from Sew Country, and today I'm going to be going over the Prince project box from J.J. Custom Fabrics. So the first thing we're going to do is talk a little bit about what was in that box. I have an in-depth video explaining everything you would get in that box. If you want to see that video, just click on the link in the description below. But for this specific video, we're going to be sewing up the box, so I'm not going to tell you everything about it. Whenever we get this project box, it includes the latest pattern from K.Azcona Designs, and this pattern was developed specifically for this project box. The pattern is called the Raindrop, and it has a really unique shape, but it is still beginner friendly, so you're going to have a great time sewing it. When you get your pattern, the first thing I always do is I print out my cut list, and then I print out my pattern pieces. For this cut list, she breaks down everything you need, and the dimensions are listed here, but I'm not going to show those just out of respect to the designer. The first thing we're going to need is our A main. That is this piece right here. Now you can see I'm using the vinyl for my outer pieces of my main panel from this Prince project box. You will need 2 outers, and you will need 2 of your lining. I am again using the lining that was provided. You can see this is my lining material right here. You have 2 options. This is a fabric and this is a fabric that is in the box, so you can choose which one you want. So 4 A pieces. The next thing she tells us on our cut list is that we need 4 woven interfacing. If you're using the vinyl from your box, you do not need to put woven interfacing on this. So you would only cut out 2 woven interfacing for your lining pieces. I'm not going to show you how to fuse that on there, but you just fuse it with your iron. If you have any specific questions about fusing interfacing, please ask. The next thing she tells us is pattern piece B is our main stabilizer. We're going to need 2 of those. You will need the stabilizer even if you are using the vinyl, and yes, you can iron onto the vinyl with this vinyl. You can see, I hope you can see, that my interfacing, the stabilizer, is cut smaller. It is actually going to be like pretty much exactly your seam allowance, so that way this stays out, just to reduce bulk in this pattern. I do sew on a domestic machine, so this is a way that Kim gives us a little bit of help when we sew on domestics to make it an easier, better sew. So whenever I attach a stabilizer, and I'm using Pixie Fuse, that's all the interfacing I use, so whenever I attach this on there, I iron it from this side. I do not ever let my iron hit the pretty side, the front side, the right side, whatever you want to call it, just for fear of melting it. But on this, J.J. Custom Fabrics vinyl has a kind of a cloth backing, and it can be ironed easily. Now, of course, I'm not going to leave it just my iron on here. I'm just going to go quickly over it, but I am going to make sure that it fuses. Okay, so that is your B stabilizer. You need 2 of those. Then we move on to C. That's our back pocket. So let me show you that piece. This is my back pocket. I'm going to cut 2 of these. I'm going to cut 1 of my vinyl. You do not have to use vinyl. You could use one of the other materials in the box. I'm choosing to use the vinyl for this one, and then my lining for that back pocket is going to be one of the woven pieces in the box. I went ahead and placed mine right sides together because this is how we're going to sew it. So whenever I cut out a piece, I go ahead and clip it to what it needs to be clipped to, just so I don't get confused and just so it's organized a little bit better. So now we're on to D, our gusset. This is the first pattern that Kim has designed with a gusset, and so I was really excited to see how she would do this because all her patterns are beginner friendly and this works out great. So if this is your first time using a gusset, this is a great pattern to attempt it with because it is not a full gusset all the way around, so that makes it a little bit easier to sew with. So this is my gusset piece, D. When we flip it over, we're going to see that E is our gusset stabilizer. It is a separate piece that we will cut. So you won't cut your stabilizer out of your gusset piece. It'll actually be E, gusset stabilizer, and that again is so we keep it out of our seam allowance so that we can sew this on a domestic and have a better sew. That is the pattern pieces. Now we have one piece that we do need to cut with measurements only, and that is our interior, our lining zipper pocket. I'm not going to give you the measurements for this, just for her safety, but anyway, what you do is you cut it with the measurements and then you will apply a woven interfacing to the back of that. That is all the fabric and materials you need to create this bag. Super simple, beginner friendly, it's a quick cut. Now let's talk about some of the other things we're going to need for this bag. This is going to be considered a crossbody bag. So you have two options. If you get the project box, what I did was I took the webbing they gave me and then I immediately cut off my two D-ring connectors. She gives us the measurements for these, so I just cut off this right away and the rest of the webbing is going to be my strap. That's how simple I did mine. When we cut off the two pieces for our D-ring connectors, one of our connectors is going to be for the bottom. This is the bottom connector. I just take that length, fold it in half, and slide my D-ring on the top of this. You can see, pretty simple and easy on that one. For the one for the top, it's a little bit different. We're going to attach this D-ring to the back of our bag right here at the top. So Kim didn't want to have any raw edges here, so the way she prevents that is we do some folding here. After you cut your D-ring connector, draw a line 1 inch down, and that is where your D-ring is going to sit. So draw that line, put your D-ring there, and then I used a piece of double-sided tape here at the top and here at the bottom, and I'm going to fold that down and secure that so that my two raw edges meet right in the middle. So let me go ahead and do that now, and so this part is done. And then when we sew this onto the back of our bag, it'll secure that and keep that in place. The double-sided tape is just for the ease of sewing it on there so things aren't shifting, but the stitches will actually hold it securely. So that is the prep for the two D-rings. I did use 1 inch webbing that comes in the box and 1 inch D-rings. Set those aside for later when we need them. The other hardware we'll need is I'm using two 1 inch swivel hooks, and I'm using one 1 inch adjustable bar. I'm also going to be cutting out 2 pieces of zipper tape from the box. It is included, the zipper tape's included in there, and the measurements for these are listed in your pattern. The longer one is going to be for your exterior. I went ahead and attached my pull. And the smaller one is going to be for our interior. This is all we need to complete this bag. So again, super easy and simple beginner bag. Let's go ahead and get started with the sewing part and get things underway. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on making our strap. Okay, so whenever I make my strap, I don't want to worry about the ends fraying, and where I do sew on a domestic, lots of times I don't like to do that double fold because it just kind of gets thick and bulky. So what I do is after I cut out my vinyl pieces for this bag, I just take a small piece of this. It is a 1 inch by, let's just say 1.5, and I fold it over and sew it on. So this is about what my piece looks like. I don't even really measure it so much. I just cut it out and make sure it's even. I fold it in half, and then I attach it right there, slip my webbing inside, and then I'm just going to top stitch across about 1/8 of an inch, and then I'm going to trim up my side. So let me do that real quick just so you can see how that's going to look. And this is the way I finish my ends on my strap, so I don't have to worry about it fraying or extra bulk when sewing with a domestic machine. So that's finished. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 1 inch adjustable bar, and I'm going to go ahead and mark about 1 inch down from my finished end, and I'm just going to slide it through. I'm going to have this bar sitting about at that 1 inch mark I made. You probably can't see it since it's a dark material. And then I'm going to fold it down to the back. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to stitch right across to secure that, and it's going to be right above my finished edge. If you want, you can also rivet this instead. Just for the video, I am not going to be doing any riveting on camera. Trim up my threads there. This first part done. Now what I'm going to do, have this facing up. Make sure I don't twist everything. And I'm just going to slide, sorry about that, it fell down, my swivel hook on there. And then I'm going to feed this through again. You can see now my swivel hook is there at the bottom. I'm going to take this free edge again, and I'm going to attach my other swivel hook right here. And then I'm just going to fold this down. About 1 inch. And again, sew right on top of that line, and that is my finished strap. That is all I do. It's adjustable now, and it can be removed if I want it to. I do back stitch, of course, when making these stitches. Okay, my crossbody strap is done. I'm going to set this aside until I'm ready to attach it there at the end. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to the next part of this bag making, which I think is the easiest part, and that is making the back pocket. To make the back pocket, like I explained, I'm going to get my 2 back pocket pieces. I'm going to clip them so They completely match up around all edges, right sides together, and I'm just going to sew at the top. I'm going to sew with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to follow the curve while I sew, making sure I back stitch on both ends. And then when I'm done, I'm going to make just clips, little slits along the top. If you have a set of pinking shears, this would be a great time to use them. If you're really nervous or if your vinyl's really thick, you could even make actual notches. But this vinyl in this box is great, very domestic friendly, so I'm just going to make a few slits along the curve just to make sure it folds nicely. As always, I'm going to be sewing. My stitch length is about a 2.5 on my domestic machine. I don't really change that. I've sewed my back together, the back side together, my back pocket, and I made my clip. So now I'm going to open it and flip it so that it's wrong sides together, and then do some top stitching. Line everything up. I'm going to go ahead and put a clip down there just to help make sure that my lining doesn't want to fold up on top of itself. And I'm going to roll that lining down because I really don't want to see it when I look at the back of my bag. I do not change my stitch length whenever I'm top stitching, but if you want to go up to 3, you could, but I keep mine at a 2.5. I'm going to just do 1/8 of an inch seam allowance while I'm doing my top stitching. Again, following that curve. Top stitching is done. Now I'm going to baste this back pocket onto the back of my bag. I grab my exterior piece. I make sure that I do have my stabilizer already attached. And now I'm just going to put it on the bottom, match up my edges, and simply baste it on at the 1/8 of an inch. my back pocket is complete. I'm just going to trim up those little ears and my threads. Okay, I'm going to set this aside, and now we're going to work on the front of our bag, which is making the main zipper. Okay, now we're going to be sewing our front zipper. This front zipper is the main access to the bag, and it will be used to attach our main piece A exterior and our main piece A lining. We're going to clip these right sides together. We're going to make sure we have our interfacing, the woven interfacing attached to our lining piece. We are going to make sure that we have the stabilizer attached to our exterior piece. The exterior stabilizer is piece B. It does have a cutout so that you can attach the zipper and not have that extra bulk. Make sure you have it so that they line up correctly. So you'll have to have this turned the right way to establish that. So what I do is I put my glue side up to cut that out. When I flip this over, I have them, you can see, attached. So I'm working from the wrong side of my lining piece. What I do then is I put my pattern piece A with that zipper pocket cut out. Then I just trace my box on, and then I'm going to sew directly on the lines. I am not going to sew these short ends. I don't do that with any of my pocket pieces simply because I feel like I don't get really good corners when I sew across there. So I just back stitch at the top of the bottom, break my stitches, and then sew this line, back stitch top and bottom. Then what I'll do is I will cut down this line, and then I will push my lining through so that it'll be on the back of my exterior. So let's get that started. I am just going to sew with my regular stitch length, which is 2.5. So now when I'm cutting, I'm going to come to this little V I made, and I'm going to cut diagonal right up against my stitches, but not going through my stitches. I will repeat that on the other side. And now it's just time for me to push this through. Now, since I have vinyl, I am not taking this over to the ironing board. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my fingers and kind of finger press that open a little to kind of help teach the vinyl that I want it to open and fold back. I'm going to clip this back and kind of roll that lining out of the way because I do not want to see my lining when I sew my zipper in place. Now I'm going to use these clips for a few minutes just to kind of I call it train the vinyl, but kind of give it some memory as to how I want it to fold. And so I will take these clips out whenever I go to sew my zipper in. So this is just a temporary, it's just serving as a, I guess, in place of the iron, since I can't really iron the vinyl this way. So what I do is I just put it here and I just work with it as a sew and just kind of do it that way. I'm going to sew around this opening 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to use my regular stitch length of 2.5. I'm going to back stitch. I start here at the top and then I just go completely around my box and I just work with this material, pulling my lining out of the way because I don't want that lining to show. So this is what the front will look like. This is what the back will look like. I'm going to trim off my tape and then we will get started with our next step. So now we're going to work on the interior zipper and we're going to do it pretty much the same way we did the exterior. We're going to have our lining panel piece. This is the last piece we have, the last lining panel piece. This is A. Again, we have it interfaced with a woven on the back. We're also going to have one of our interior zipper pocket pieces, the lining for the zipper pocket. I'm going to place it right sides together with our main lining piece A. Now, how we figure out the placement for this is pretty cool. What Kim wants us to do, she gives us the exact measurements from where this is going to start. So I'm going to kind of go ahead and explain this to you because I felt like it was really neat. So our line is going to start 3/4 of an inch down and 1 inch in. That's where our line starts drawing. When we draw that line on there, we're going to use that pattern piece A to line it up exactly with it. So you'll take, after you draw your line here, you're going to take that pattern piece A and put it on top of your lining and then make sure that this box is there in the window, and then you can finish drawing on your line and, you know, on the other side and make sure everything's even. But that's just a really cool way to do it, so you don't have to measure down on your lining panel. You have that pattern piece, so I really like that. We're going to sew this the same way. We're going to start right here, end right here, back stitch. I don't know if you can see that clearly, but back stitch, then I break my stitches, back stitch, then I will cut down that line in the middle and then cut to angle there at the triangle, push that pocket through, and then we'll top stitch our zipper on. So I'm going to use my normal stitch length and just sew directly on that line. Since this is going to be cotton instead of the vinyl, I won't have to, I could take it over to the iron if I want to, or I can just finger press it. For the sake of this video, I'm just going to finger press it. If I wasn't filming the video, I would take it over to the iron just to get it a little bit cleaner, but it's okay. Okay, and I always just fold mine and then use my scissors to start. You can also use your seam ripper if this makes you a little nervous. Cut down to that V, and again, then I just angle those cuttings out. Just do not cut into your stitches. push through the same way you did with your front zipper. I'm just using my fingers to kind of press and roll that down. Now I have my opening. I'm going to take my last remaining zipper. Like I said, this one will be the shorter zipper since we used the longer one already. I already have my pull attached. Going to have my pull closing to the top, just like I did. So pretty much repeating almost everything. Okay, again, I'm going to start at the top. 2.5 stitch length, and I'm just going to sew 1/8 of an inch away from that opening. While I'm sewing, I'm going to be watching to make sure my teeth stay in the middle and that my zipper pocket lining does not peek through. Now that we have our interior zipper pocket sewn on the front, we're going to flip it over. We're going to take our remaining zipper pocket lining and place it directly on top of the other one. Now, when we look at this, we can see that there's overhang. What we're going to do in the pattern, she tells us we're sewing this bag with a 3/8 inch of a seam allowance with the gusset. So I want to trim this so that it is right around 3/8 of an inch, clearing those sides. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew my top and my sides, but I'm going to leave an opening so that I can turn the bag. Okay, so I want to leave the opening right down here, right at the bottom, okay? Now that I have my pocket sewn, I'm going to trim down to about 1/8 of an inch. Remember, leave your bottom open. That is how you are going to turn this bag. So let's look at what we got. We have our lining with a zipper pocket. We have our front with a zipper pocket and our other lining piece. We have our back with a slip pocket. Now, before we move on to our gusset, what we're going to do is we're going to attach our D-rings. The bottom D-ring, if you remember, was just folded in half. We're going to place the raw edges together, have this D-ring centered at the bottom, and we're just going to base that in with 1/8 of an inch. Now for the top piece, if you remember, this connector is the one where we enclose the raw edges, and the way we're going to do this is we're going to measure down 1 inch and put a piece of double-sided tape. The pattern tells us the top of the connector, not the top of your D-ring, the top of the connector is going to go right there, centered 1 inch down. We are going to stitch a box around this. You can add a rivet in the middle if you want to, or you can even do a second row of stitches. This is going to secure our D-ring at the top and at the bottom. After we do these steps, then we are ready to start working on the gusset. Okay, so now that we have everything sewn, it's time to put the bag all together. So the way we're going to do that is by attaching the gusset. We're going to have one gusset for our exterior and one gusset for our lining. We sew these separately, so we're going to start with the exterior and find your centers on your gusset and the bottom of your bag, and then we're just going to match them right sides together. I went ahead and opened my zipper halfway on my exterior and on my interior, just so I don't forget that later. I match up my center point, and then I'm just going to clip around. I'm going to start at the bottom and just go slowly and clip around that curve until it goes all the way up to the sides where the gusset ends. Then I'm going to sew on the gusset at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now, if you put your stabilizer on centered and correctly, you'll be pretty much sewing up against that stabilizer, but just kind of know those are two things. Don't get the stabilizer in your seam allowance, and it should be around 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to finish stitching this, then you're going to see me sew it on, and then you're going to see me attach the other side of the exterior the exact same way and stitch it on at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance too. Oh, that one broke. Make sure that when you're sewing on your gusset, you keep this lining out of the way. It's not going to be attached at this time. They are, like I said, they are attached separately. So I'm going to do this, and then we will sew on the lining after we get the exterior gusset sewn on. So now that we have our gusset attached, we have our exteriors open at the top and the gusset is attached all the way around. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to attach the rest of the exterior to itself. We're still keeping this lining out of the way. And when we get to this sides where our gusset meets the exterior, we're just going to go over that about an inch stitch down here just to close up that little bit of a gap on each side. So go down a little bit on your gusset, about an inch. Still 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. After we finish this, then we're going to repeat the same thing for our lining. So now we are going to just repeat to the lining what we just did to the exterior. So we're going to take our lining gusset and get our center marks on here, and then we're just going to match it to the centers on our lining panels. I'm going to clip this all the way around just like I did for the exterior, and I want to sew it at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance the exact same way I did before. So now we have attached the lining gussets. The last thing to do is just to attach the top part of the lining to itself. Remember, we are not sewing the lining or the main together, or the lining or the exterior. Sorry about that. The lining or the exterior, we're not attaching them. Just like we did with the exterior, when we get to the sides where the gussets meet, we're going to pinch those together and then just go about an inch down over that existing line where we stitched the gusset on, and that's just going to close up any gaps that may be there where the gusset meets, and also to just kind of reinforce that area. So now you can see we have two separate pouches, sides, whatever you want to call it. Before we reach in through the bottom of our pocket, our lining, and turn, we're going to trim down our seam allowances all the way around both the exterior and the lining. We're going to trim them down to around 1/8 of an inch, except here at the bottom. We're going to leave where we have our D-ring connector. We're not going to touch it, so you can just angle there. Start there and angle, and then end there with the angle, and don't touch that area just for that reinforcement. Okay, now that we have all our seams trimmed down and everything completed, we're just going to reach in through the lining pocket and start turning the bag. So you're actually going to have to go through both pockets to get everything turned out. So this will take a little bit of time, so be patient and just go slow. Okay, now that I have the bag birthed, I am going to just shape it a little bit and push it around. You want this to kind of, with vinyl, you know, you kind of push it there so it can kind of learn where to go. If you're doing this in cotton, you're just going to go to the ironing board. Now, once I get it pushed out everywhere, what I'm going to do next is just reach in, get my lining pocket out, and I'm just going to close up that hole so that everything is completed and it's ready for my strap. My bag is now officially complete. If you have any trouble shaping, just use clips on the vinyl. That's what I usually do. I can see a couple places where I need to clip it just to teach it where to go. But other than that, the bag is done. Here is the front with the super cute zipper pull. And here is my back. Get that shaped out just a little bit there, with the back pocket and the crossbody strap. I'm going to post some pictures of my bag once I get it completely shaped. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please subscribe to my channel if you want to see more tutorials like this, and I hope you have a great day sewing. Thanks.